Welcome to another edition of the Deals for Dentists podcast. Today, we're joined by Steve Anderson, and he is the author of DentalEase, your dental practice mentoring guide, an essential guide that assists dentists to make wise and educated decisions effortlessly. So, Steve, welcome aboard.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Eric.
So you're zooming in from Arizona?
I am. Yeah, we're enjoying a cool breeze, and actually it feels like beach weather right now. It's surprising to us.
Nice. So you can go to Deals for Dentists and get 50% off his book and its offerings. And I got to tell you, your book puts mine to shame. I mean, this is a solid book. And then look at my book. I was actually using it as a bookmark for your book, because your book was just, I mean, this is like a textbook.
It is.
Yeah. It's just very, very well organized and very, I was going through and just seemed very unintimidating. And it was just very well put together. How long did it actually take you to write that book?
Well, the first draft was intimidating for me too, because it started with 4 or 5 feet of notes. And then back in 2008, when I finally got after it and we had a little extra time with the market crash, it took me probably 3-4 months to get the basic crux of it. Did the first book, and then the second book I kept putting off for another 8 years, just because I thought, it's a lot of work and I didn't know if it'd be needed. And I had so much encouragement, people telling me you really need to finish up. So I did it. And, but that took me probably another year to finish up. It was quite an undertaking.
So this is actually your second book, and you had your first book was called Blueprints for Success, but that was focused on dental students, correct?
Yeah. I still publish it, but just for dental students when I lecture at their colleges. And we have 2 colleges local, and everyone that attends, I give them a book for free.
Oh, that's awesome. So now you tell me about your story and how you got involved with dental offices.
Actually, it was a result of me having a need to be needed. And back in 96, 97, I'm going, I am so tired of being everything to everyone. And I'm so tired of being just a number and not having a value. And so driving to work one morning, it's a 20-minute ride. And I go, okay, what can I do different? And who can I impact and make a difference in their lives? And who needs the most help? Dentists just hit me slap in the face and say, wow, without a doubt, it was the dental community. And just looking back at the dental offices I completed up to that date. And so by the time I got to work, I had the name Denco, which stands for dental construction. And I had the basic business plan. And then I started turning down residential, and I started turning down industrial and hazardous strip center, and just kept focusing it down. And that was the hard part, saying no to certain people that I developed relationships with over the years.
Okay, so you're a general contractor, and now do you specifically at this point just work with dental offices?
Well, our name is Denco Dental Construction, so it's pretty big commitment. And then probably each year there's 15 to 20% other. When we have a golfing buddy that's ears, nose, and throat, we just finished a fertility clinic, surgery center. We've done urgent cares. We've done other things that in the medical field, but dental, I find, is can be so involved, and we've found that the rest are easy.
Oh, so dentistry is just it's just another animal as far as the complexity.
Yeah. And it's something in which it really needs attention to the detail, and that's what so often gets missed. And that's what I've seen over the years of the pain points that dentists go through.
How many dental offices have you helped?
If I combined probably over 1,000 for just design builds. And I take the ground ups we've done, the tenant improvements and the major remodels, and then I add to it all the other miscellaneous. We're probably 3,000-4,000, but
Wow.
for the doing a large remodel or a new office, I would say probably around 1,000, 1,100, somewhere in there.
So you'll help dentists that are looking to start a scratch office, relocate or remodel or open up a second location.
Yeah.
The
Or
whole.
third or fourth or
Mhm. And do you help GPs and specialists?
yeah, we do them all. Yeah.
Do you find there's each one has its own different set of complexities when you go from a GP to like an orthodontic office?
Yeah, it's really coming down to the beginning, the first question, who are you and what's important to you?
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds simple, but over the years, that's the biggest question that I find that the doctors haven't taken the time to determine who they are. And then the other part of that question is nobody's asked them the intriguing questions that help define what that space is going to look like. And so often that gets handed off to an architect or a contractor or an equipment person, even will draw it up, but nobody asks those intriguing questions that really help drive what the final product should be.
So you really need to find out and each dentist is different with what
Oh,
what their philosophy is, what type of practice they want to have. Is it rural, suburban, urban? It's
yeah,
just so many
yeah.
differences.
In fact, Eric, the thing I've seen is one comes to mind. It was a local dentist and it was prosthodontist. And he had 10 years prior, he had hired a specialist to help him design the office. And so when I walked in, he had a set of plans and he says, Steve, you're going to do the office. I want to expand and add these 5 operatories. And I said, great. He'd been paying for 10 years on this empty suite next to him. And what I did is I set it aside like I always do. And I said, let's talk first. I know you have these plans. I know you have them permitted. I know you're ready to go to work, but let's just make sure people have asked the right questions for you. And I walked through the office and we talked a little bit and we rolled the plans out. And I said, you look at this and you look at that, they don't work. And he said, well, you're right. Nobody's ever asked me that. And one of the biggest issues was he was willing to go in and do 5 more operatories, exactly the same thing that he did previously. But for 10 years, his pain point was he didn't have enough room between the head of the chair and the head wall cabinet. And then he had a sink right there, and he was a right-handed doctor, and he had a sink right where he wanted to put things. But nobody asked the question. And then the next question is, I said, is there any reason we can't take, maybe a foot or two out of that 6-foot hall behind you? Well, that's a good idea. Nobody's ever said that, but it's just, another client comes to mind, Eric, was he wanted to take and just instantly go into a new office, and his pain points nobody talked to, but he just calls up and says, I found a 6,000 square foot office. And I'm thinking, great, there's a 700,000 plus tenant improvement. Well, and then I'm starting to thinking as I'm driving down to go meet with him, and I knew he was in 1,800 square feet. So I had all these questions. I'm kind of going, And then I asked the question. I said, so what do you need? Well, I need 1 additional operatory. I need a consult area. I just need to end up with a small office and a place for my CBCT. And I'm going, okay, why don't you cancel that meeting with the attorney or your broker? And we're not going to do that. It's going to kill you. And why don't we go spend $40,000 remodel your existing office and get exactly what you need? And he said, we can do that. But he did have room for that. I mean, his private office was probably 16 foot by 16 foot. And there alone was going to allow enough room just for adding an operatory.
So do you find that, dentists, they're hiring all these different people, too many cooks in the kitchen, and do you help? Are you that kind of that one-stop shop where you can help me from finding the location to financing to construction? Are you able to help the dentist with all aspects?
Yeah, well, it comes back to my original thing. I can't be everything to everyone,
Mm-hmm.
and I got to stay true to who I am. And so I found professionals that I really try to match with who they are, because, just in consulting or even dentists, why does one succeed across the street from another one that's kind of struggling? It's personality, relationships, and some people like a very aggressive CPA, some want a very cautious CPAs, and this all the way down through all the professionals. And so basically, when we have clients come to us, we find out where they're at and we help them formulate and assemble the team. We work closely with an architect, and it's about ease of use. And we're part of that design. And then in the process, we create that office that becomes their footprint for their beginning. But it's interesting, is what I've found is in the first meeting, typically, if I have a meeting with a client and ask them the right questions, I found the second meeting, we're sitting looking at a preliminary floor plan that usually is anywhere from 90 to 98% there. Mm-hmm. And I've seen whether it's dental companies or other people will go through 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 different drawings, and they keep going in this circle because they're not asking the right questions.
So really, really all starts with that initial consultation to try to get into that dentist's head to find out what their goals are and what they're really trying to do and what their dream is.
That's so far so critical. And but again, it starts with understanding who they are, and it helps them go. When they really understand who they are, they actually make quicker decisions, and I tell students, I said, what a great experience that you have as you're stepping out into residency and you're doing this, your first office, working for someone else. I said, keep a list of your pros and cons, list of things that work for you, that you really like, things that you don't, and it's going to be different for each dentist. And then when you get together and get to that point, you're ready to start, you have a starting point, you have a starting block. And that goes for pictures too. Pictures of offices you like, or you go on the website and you see some, do a screenshot of it and throw it in a file. And just simple little things like that will make your life so much easier later.
So as much information that they can give you as possible is going to help.
And that's the thing, is I can't do them all. And that's why I wrote the book, is to help them assimilate that team, because every part of the country has different strengths. There's some areas where the equipment person is really strong and is really good at it, and he might be able to give a recommendation for a contractor, an architect, or some areas you don't even need an architect. But it's making sure that you have that strong person to really help you assimilate that and give that information to them. And the key is having those professionals that really care about you rather than your wallet. I mean, we've all experienced those ones that love our wallet, and they'll sell us things we don't need. We've all had that experience. I mean, I had a spa that sat on a shelf, and I had paid for this spa, and it was, a 12 by 12 box. I was so embarrassed. For 3 years it sat on a shelf, and my employees wrote Steve Spa. And once I finally got over that and realized that that's part of it, is getting over yourself, and we all make mistakes, and learn from them. What can we do better? And so when you're looking for that professional, are they asking you questions, Eric? Things that you can tell. You go to a meeting, and are they really engaged in you, or are they thinking about their next question that they want to throw at you? Or are they giving you options as you talk? And a great example of that, I sat down with another client just last week, and as we were talking, he said, I really want this, and I'm thinking to myself, okay. And what it was is they were really wanting 8 operatories in like 1,800 square feet. And I'm thinking to myself, that's going to be painful. Could you do it? Sure. But then I started asking, this is a startup. And then I started asking, I said, part of your equation, where'd you come up with the 8 ops? Well, most architects at that point would just cram it in there and do it. But the question is why 8 ops? And he says, well, in the future, when I have an associate, and then when I get ready to do transitions and I'm growing, and I said, whoa, okay, whoa, you're 10, 20 years away here. Yeah. And why don't we make a very productive office that will serve you extremely well? And it's proven that 5, no more than 6 ops will do that extremely well. And we can fit into that square footage, because square footage is expensive these days, and so you want to put as much as you can into a smaller box, but you don't want to feel like you're, sardine and you can't breathe, and you want to make sure that you're comfortable in your surroundings.
Now, do you actually help the dentist? Let's say I just want to start up an office. Will you help me assemble a team?
I just helped a client in, actually wasn't even a client. It was just a dentist that reached out to me and said, can you help me out? I'm over in your neighboring state. And I did. I helped put together some people and helped him get going. And then I knew he was in good hands, and off he went. And he ended up buying my book just to help him as a guideline. And that's really what it's about. It's just, I like to help and make a difference in people's lives.
What about new grads? They probably just don't know the right questions to ask. Would we have them tell them to read the book first and then get back to you for the consultation? Or do you find they're just not ready yet?
Well, it's interesting, for the graduates, the book would be a great thing to have your parent or your spouse and loved one or something buy you for an investment for your future. But the thing is, I've always felt strongly, and I've proven it over the years, that typically in a class of 100, there's typically 1, maybe 2 that are ready to go on their own. Mm-hmm. That's it. The rest, I would say, don't even think about it. Go learn on someone else's coattails, and, allow someone else to pay you while you're honing your skills and while you're taking notes of the pros and the cons and all those things, and take advantage of that. And that's really where you'll succeed. It'll work. It'll serve you so much better.
Yeah, I personally was not ready right out of school to do my own thing. I needed, get some years under my belt, start honing my skills, and then, then start to learn the practice management side of dentistry.
Yeah. And also, Eric, just the self-confidence. Mm-hmm. It's so huge and so needed as you step out. And, when you don't know what you don't know, and so you have those extra questions in your mind, patients can sense that too. So
yeah. I wanted to put page 29 here. This just shows you how complex. You have dentist in the center there, and then all around it you have CPA, attorney, general contractor, architect, equipment, supplies, insurance, broker. It's just so much that goes on with a dental office, and we don't learn any of this in school. No. So it's very overwhelming to get involved with building a practice. Yeah, that diagram and the preceding page, I think it is, those diagrams were a result of having a meeting with the dentist, and we completed their floor plan. Mm-hmm. And as we completed their floor plan and they're ready to go to the next step about talking about power and ceiling, they called me up the next morning and says, I couldn't sleep last night. And I go, so what's going on? He says, well, I was really, really struggling with what kind of furniture to get in my waiting room.
And I'm going, okay. Ah, and so that was a result of their overwhelmed and they're thinking. And so I asked a different question. I said, so is it because there's so much to do and you don't know what to do next? Yeah. And so that's where I came up with the flow chart,
Yeah.
just so that's one thing I have in the book is it just helps you at this stage early on. You only deal with these 5 or 6 or 10 items. Then you finish that and you get into the next stage where you're starting to design the office and you deal with those. And then you get the floor plan decided on it. And now you work on these items. And it just to help people have a checklist to go through, because that's, I think in bullet points, and it just helps people move forward. And part of that was also that diagram is when doctors would talk to their team. So they'd talk to the CPA and the architect and the equipment person and so on. But they would never tell everyone the same thing, or they'd leave little things out, that really would impact the square footage or the location that the broker's looking at, or just little things. So I found if you go on the other page, what we have is a diagram where we have the dentist. And the first sphere around the dentist, you have your broker and your CPA and your contractor and equipment person, and they're there to help you, but they all hear the same information. They understand the same goal. They understand I have to have this done by a certain date. They understand that all those little telltale signs and things to help you with your square footage. So, and also your other goals and objectives. And then there's a second sphere that encapsulates that. And, you get into the signage and all these other things. And then there's a third sphere. And so it was to also help us just realize that they're around you to help you make good choices. And that's what it's about. We talked about those accountable professionals earlier on. And the key in that is the accountable. They come back to you and they say, I'm on schedule. I have this completed by a certain date. I'll do this. It's measurable. It's timely. And it makes such a difference.
I agree. I think it is so overwhelming and so stressful to not have a plan. And, even clinically, when I'm working on patients, when I first got out of school, all the voices in my head were telling me, do this step, do that step. And it just was so overwhelming.
What's
But
first?
now, yeah. And I have a very specific automated, almost like flowchart checklist. When I'm doing a procedure, I go from one step to the next step to the next step. And the procedures just go, most of them, occasionally there's that don't, but most of them go very seamless because I follow a flow chart and a checklist. But same thing goes for starting up a very big undertaking, which is a dental practice, and to do it in, like you said, little chunks, like these 5 steps, then move on to the next. If you try to do too much in too short of a time, you're gonna really stress yourself out.
Well, that and another thing, excuse me, in the book, you'll find a critical path. And it's another form that I created to help dentists and your team help you be accountable. And it has one column for projected and one column for actual. So the projected is you sit down collectively and put together a timeline. What is this really going to take us? And what's interesting is you go to do a tenant improvement, which basically a glorified term. It says, I'm going to go into an existing office, whether it's been dental or it's been ears, nose, and throat, or just a guru's professional office, whatever it is, and we're going to make this a dental office. And that conversion, and what's the process going to take? And it has, over 80 steps, and people don't realize what's involved in that. And met with a client last week, and we had talked with them 2 months prior, and they had almost enough time 2 months ago, and now the window's closing, but they're still looking for a space. And they had 3 deals fall through. And the challenge is we start at the end. Okay, you have to be out because they're tearing your building down. Mm-hmm. You don't have any options here. And so we start at the bottom and work up and say, based on that, basically we need to be working drawings by the first of next week, and we haven't found the space yet. And so what does that tell you?
What do you find the biggest mistake that dentists make? Is it not having a plan? Is it trying to nickel and dime everything? What do you find out there that is?
There's several things. One of them is nickel and diming and not realizing how much is your time worth.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you think about, if you take the time to look at your production, you look at how many hours you actually work, and you divide it, basically you got what you are worth per hour. And so often I've seen dentists, to save a couple bucks, will spend a couple hours each month trying to save nickels and dimes. And you know, so one of the things that we talk about in some seminars is about majoring on the majors rather than majoring on the minors.
Yeah.
And then also understand the return, you know, the return on the equipment. And I've seen doctors, oh, you know, I can save $20,000 on this equipment package. Well, the whole package is $150,000 and they're saving $20,000, or it's $200,000. And what happens is it might be 10%. What they're investing in their equipment in is something that's only going to last them a couple of years versus something that could last them long term. And I've literally seen doctors in the first 2 years had to replace their dental chairs because they saved money.
Yep.
Well, all of a sudden they spent it, and then they got to go spend it again. And, you know, that's really something that's a heartbreaker for me, Eric, is another one is probably the one that can save them the most money is not doing the brokering and trying to find a location yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it amazes me every year. There's a certain percentage of dentists that spend all their waking hours and their weekends and their evenings looking for a space, and they try to negotiate a space for themselves, and they think they're saving money. Well, isn't it interesting that you can select and hire the best broker in your area that understands dental, and he can work for you and you don't have to pay anything? Isn't that an interesting concept? But so many people would rather go out and, you know, negotiate things. And I've seen literally some doctors then take it a step farther, and they won't sign a conditional agreement saying, okay, I'm going to go give you the best I can as a broker, and for that, you're going to help me and you're just going to work with me. And instead, they want to work with 4 or 5. Well, just last month, you know what the result of that was? I literally had a premium space, and I found out that the dentist, there was actually, quote, 3 dentists looking at the same space. It was the same dentist.
It's competing
and
with
he
him.
was and he was bidding against himself and negotiating himself, and he lost the space.
Yeah, that's wild.
So just, you find that, you know, that professional that can really help you and make a difference in your life. And what that does in reciprocation, they know that as they go out and negotiate, that they're doing the best thing they possibly can for you, and they get more tenant improvement dollars. They get longer rent, you know, rather than, I've had probably expense wise, it's probably the most painful thing I've seen dentists do is when they negotiate themselves, they think, wow, I got $20,000 for tenant improvements. Okay, let's, you know, the average dental office now is what, $250,000, $300,000. Oh, I got $20,000 that the landlord's kicking in. Isn't that great? You know, in this market right now, I've seen anywhere from $20 to $90 a square foot by the landlord.
Mm-hmm.
And it depends on the area, it depends on what the issue is and what's going on, and there's a lot of variables to that. But the next big thing I see is they get real timid in signing a 3-year lease, and I'm thinking, okay, you're going to spend $250,000 and you're not going to sign a lease for more than 3 years, really? But what happens is, if you're willing to commit to at least 5 years, you get more tenant improvement dollars, and then you're a more viable candidate. And there's this little factor, Eric, that so many dentists don't stop and think about. You are valuable, and you don't realize how valuable you are. You know what the default rate is for dentists?
Like 0.01%.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, it's less than 0.5% nationwide for 10 years. Not 1 year, but over 10 years.
Yeah.
You know what it is for a contractor in 5 years?
What is it?
67%. 67% failure rate for contractors in 5 years. Do you know that in 10 years, the average office, small business, 80% of them are out of business?
Unbelievable.
80%. Now think about that. How valuable are you as a dentist? You know, you're willing to put money into a space. You're going to stay there how long? Most dentists stay in one spot, not 5 years, not 10 years, not 15. Usually it's 20 plus years.
Yeah, I heard it's dentists, veterinarians, and mortuaries are some of the safest investments for landlords. Yeah, so all the things you just mentioned are it's just so far beyond our scope of what we know. And like you said, the time that it takes, our golden goose is chairside dentistry, producing. That's our golden goose. And when you start taking away from that, thinking you're going to save some money by spending all this time trying to find, a cheaper or a nickel and dime, it's in the end, it's going to come back to bite you, and all the stress that you're putting yourself through when you could just have an expert handle it for you. So I really like the last chapter of your book titled "Living the Dream." Is that what your goal is try to help dentists, live that dream in their career?
I realized early on, I'd finished my first big office, and it had a theme to it. It's for a children's dentist, and it had some trains and stuff. And I created a train track that went around the soffits on the ceilings and stuff. And this is a number of years ago. I won't say how long, quite a while ago. But when they walked in, they go, you just see their mouth drop. And they go, wow, they literally said, I feel like I'm in Disneyland. And then I knew I did it right, except one thing. The train was going the wrong direction, and all of a sudden I saw them following the train, and it was taken to the wrong door. So I turned around, made a minor adjustment, but it just kicked in right then. It's just how valuable it is. And with that, I wanted to just tell your dentist one important thing that they can really invest in. Dentists make some extra money. So what can you put your money in and you're going to have a return? There's lots of things out there, but it's real interesting is you go in and if you're a dentist that just bought a transition and it's kind of like a pig's sty. I mean, the office really needs help. Okay, I could be a little nicer here, but some of the offices I've seen are really challenging. But what's interesting is I would challenge you to just invest in putting lipstick on the pig.
Yeah.
Because if you can make it feel a little more amenable and something that it's amazing what paint, new flooring, and just dressing up something. You don't have to change cabinets. You don't have to change even sometimes you need to change the tops. But, usually just cabinetry, just sometimes repair a few things, but repaint and just dress it up will do it. But the national average is over 10, 12% return.
We had
just doing that. Now
we had this
think about
old wallpaper that we took down and just put up a nice fresh coat of paint, and it was like we had a brand new office.
Yeah, and what's interesting, what does that do to your psyche? It's interesting.
Everyone was so much happier and like, oh, this place looks great, and everyone was in a better mood.
And sometimes what little things you do, and sometimes it's just cleaning up clutter. We don't, I challenge dentists to walk in once a year, put on your calendar, maybe it's over the holidays, and walk into your office and be the patient What are they seeing? What are they experiencing? Is it clutter? Is it a lot of stuff? Is there broken things? Is it touch up that needs? But what's really interesting is when they invest in a new office, whether it's a major remodel or whether it's a new office and they literally leave that challenging office and go to something that is really fits them and who they are. And the return nationally, the national average is 34% for 2 years.
Wow.
What do you know that you can invest in and have that kind of return?
Mm-hmm.
And what's so interesting is I've seen dentists that do that, and one literally moved 3 doors down that comes to mind, and they were averaging 60 patients new a month, and they had no time to advertise. Where before they were spending 2 to 4, sometimes $5,000 or $6,000 a month advertising. Now they don't have any time to advertise. And I've seen that number of new patients go anywhere from 60 up to, I have one that was over 120. I mean, it's just mind numbing. And people say, well, how can that be? Well, it comes down to being excited to go to work.
Mm-hmm.
And it puts that skip in your step, and your team realizes it, and then the patients feel it. And I had one doctor, I love this, is he moved from a challenging office to a new one. And he said, my patients love me. And then he says, I didn't realize how much until I moved. And I said, what do you mean? He says, what was so interesting is my patients were loyal to me, but the office sucked, pardon, but it was just really bad. He says, when I moved in a new one, all of a sudden I had this flurry of referrals. And he says, and I asked him, why patients are you now referring me? He says, why didn't you do that before? He says, we were embarrassed for you. We love you, but I didn't want to refer anyone because the surroundings didn't represent the type of skill set that you were offering.
Yeah, it's such a great point you said there to put yourself in the position of like a patient and sit in the chair, look around. I have patients that, they look up and they're like, hey, doc, did you know you have a light bulb out? I'm like, oh, I never look up there. I'm always looking down. They're looking up. But that's such a great point to kind of, walk through the office, sit in each chair and just kind of get the perspective of a patient. So now you have a lot of great quotes in your book. What would you say is one of the most impactful quotes? And a lot of the quotes are from you, not just other people. What would you say is one of your favorite quotes?
Mine is it's really about be the best you can be. Always give your best, expect nothing in return, so you're never disappointed, and invest in others and make a difference in all you do.
That's awesome. Is that you? Is that your quote?
That's me.
That's Steve Anderson.
Yeah, I've realized early on I was attaching expectation to giving.
Mm-hmm.
And it was amazing how often I was getting disappointed. And I found if I just give my best and throw it out there, I know I did my best. And but I wasn't disappointed anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I love to invest and help people make better choices. And that's my payoff. It's just fun. I've been through most everything I deal with in the book is stuff I personally had to deal with. I've made a lot of poor choices over the years, and that would be a whole nother show. But what I wanted to do is turn around and say, okay, I really want you as a profession just to make better choices and help you do that in the process. So
I think we could fill up 8 episodes of just all the mistakes that I've made in my career. Steve Anderson, thank you so much for joining us. Again, the author of DentalEase, and you can go to Deals for Dentists and you can get the book for 50% off. And Steve, anything I didn't cover, or any last words of advice or nuggets for those young dentists out there?
Don't be afraid to ask questions. And if you smell something that doesn't feel right, investigate a little more. I mean,
Mhm.
I've dealt with personally bankruptcy. I've personally dealt with people embezzling and defrauding me and forgery, and it's interesting. I can go into an office and I've seen a few. I told the doctor, you need to check out what's going on
Mhm.
here. And a few months later, I hear that they've had to deal with some really tough issues.
Mhm.
And so it's really making sure that your professionals that you hire are accountable. They really care for you. They're really about you. And but there are some fabulous contractors and architects and brokers and other team members that really can make a difference in your life. But it's a matter of investing in them.
And like you said, asking the right questions. Awesome. Steve, thanks so much for joining us. Let's be in touch.
All right. Thank you so much, Eric.
All right, take care.